Well, once again, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Wednesday webinar from the East England Energy Group, EEEGR. Just to say, if I could ask all of you that are joining us, please to turn off your videos and turn off your microphones as well, just to help us preserve the bandwidth. Those of you that have been on some of the other webinars with us will be aware of that already. And if I could also ask you on this occasion, we won't be using the messaging, the chat service. We'll be using the Slido platform instead. So if I can ask you all, please, to go and register on the Slido platform. That's www.sli.do. And then enter the code EA Hub with EAH in uppercase and the UB in lowercase. And then you'll be able to answer post any questions there for our panel to be able to answer at the end. And we'll be starting the webinar in about a minute's time. Thank you. Well, good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Simon Gray. I'm the Chief Executive of the East of England Energy Group, and we'll be starting this presentation in just a few minutes' time. I still see that we have a number of people still joining us, so we'll give it just a couple of minutes longer. Just to say once again, if I could ask all of those that have just joined us, if you could turn off your videos and your microphones, just to help us preserve the bandwidth, so that hopefully everyone gets a good user experience. If I could ask those joining us also to go and register on the Slido platform, and that's www.sli.do, and entering that code there, that's EA Hub with the EAH in uppercase and the UB in lowercase, and that allows you then to post any questions within that platform there. So good morning once again. Those of you just joining us, if I could ask you all to turn off your microphones and your videos, please, just to help preserve the bandwidth. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. And we'll be starting the presentation off in just a couple of minutes. I see there are people still joining us. So once again, if I could ask you all to turn off your microphones and your videos to help us preserve the bandwidth. Thank you. So still lots of people joining us. So those of us that have just joined and may not have heard my earlier announcements, so make yourself comfortable, get yourself a beverage, and sit down and enjoy this webinar Wednesday from EEEGR, which will be starting in just a couple of minutes. We have a number of other people still joining us, late arrivals, so we'll be starting in just about a minute's time. If you're just joining us now, if I could ask you to go and register on the Slido platform, that's www.sli.do, and enter that code there, and that will allow you to post any questions you may have for the panel session we're going to have at the end. Delighted to say that we have with us today Claire Canning from ORE Catapult. We'll also have with us Victoria Sinclair from ScottishPower Renewables, Ross Ovens from who is the project director at East Anglia Hub, and Julio de la Jara from East Anglia Hub, head of contract management, will be joining us along with Claire Canning at the end for the Q&A session. So if you do want to post any questions, ask you now to go and register on the Slido platform, which is www.sli.do. And so register there, put in that code, and then you'll be able to post any questions that you may want to post to our panel for later on this morning. We still have people joining us, so I'll just give it one more minute before we start. Okay, I think we're doing pretty well. So we've got about 80 odd people now online. So thank you very much indeed, everyone. My name's Simon Gray. I'm the Chief Executive of the East of England Energy Group. And this webinar this morning, part of our Webinar Wednesday series, is considering the issue of the East Anglian Hub and also looking at the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership with our colleagues at ScottishPower Renewables and ORE Catapult and the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership. If I could have the next slide, please. So just some housekeeping issue. For those of you that were with us earlier, I did mention this. If I could just ask you all, please, to turn off your cameras and turn off your microphones to help us preserve the bandwidth. On this occasion, we're not going to be using the chat function. Rather than that, we're asking you to go onto the Slido platform. And on the Slido platform, you can post your questions. And at the end of that, we'll be having a Q&A session with our colleagues from ScottishPower Renewables and from ORE Catapult. Next slide, please. So as I said, the Q&A will be hosted at the end of the presentation using the Slido platform. So those of you that just joined us, if you haven't already done so, can I ask you all please to go onto the Slido platform? That's www.sli.do. and enter that code that's there, EA Hub with the EAH in capitals and the UB in lowercase. So if I can all ask you now to register on the Slido platform, www.sli.do, and enter that code there, and then you can post any questions that you might want there for the Q&A that we're going to have at the end. And the Q&A will be ScottishPower Renewables, joined as well by our colleagues at ORE Catapult, and Claire Canning there, who will be with us in just a second to take you through her presentation, looking at the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership funding programme. Next slide, please. So there's our agenda for this morning. A very brief welcome and introduction from me. I'll be handing over to Claire Canning in just a second. After that, we'll be going to a video prepared by our colleagues at ScottishPower Renewables, looking at the East Anglia Hub. Just to mention that we have had some issues with the video technology this morning, so it may just take a couple of seconds for that video to kick in, but bear with us. It's certainly worth listening to and giving you a lot more information about what's happening and the latest news on the hub. I'm sure many of you will have seen the news announcements yesterday, in fact, on both these subjects, both on the ScottishPower Renewable East Anglia Hub and also on the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership. And we'll be joined at the end, as I say, with a Q&A panel, and each person that's joining us in terms of the Q&A panel will turn on their cameras and microphones so that we'll then be able to go through a Q&A session. So if we have the next slide, I believe I'm now handing over to Claire Canning of ORE Catapult. So Claire, over to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Simon. Okay, so hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Good morning, everyone. My name's Claire Canning, and I am one of the programme managers at Offshore Wind Growth Partnership, and I work at ORE Catapult. Delighted to be here to be able to give you an update on what's happening with OWGP as part of this Webinar Wednesday series. So many thanks to EEEGR and to ScottishPower Renewables for being invited here today. So if I could have the next slide, please. So I'm going to give you an update on OWGP. And just for anybody that's not too familiar with what the OWGP is or how it came about, I'm sure most of you will be aware of the offshore wind sector deal that was signed last year between government and industry. And as part of that deal, there were various commitments that were made to help support the growth of the industry and the growth of UK supply chain. Various work streams that came out to help with some of these commitments. And one of these work streams was the Growth Partnership. And that was set up to really help bolster UK supply chain, help companies to grow and become more competitive, win more contracts, create more jobs, and take advantage of export opportunities as well. Next slide, please. So as I said, the programme, it's a sort of long-term business transformation programme that's been set up over 10 years, £100 million of funding over 10 years. And it's all about helping to increase competitive of UK businesses in the supply chain. As I mentioned, to improve the UK content of UK projects and to help with increased exports to global markets. So the programme itself is funded directly from industry. So our funding comes directly from the Offshore Wind Industry Council, who are providing that 100 million. And the programme is being delivered by ORE Catapult. And in terms of the delivery of the programme, it's split into two main kind of delivery streams. So we're going to have business transformation kind of support programmes to help companies develop, and also help with grant funding as well. So to provide grants for specific projects. And I'll come on to those, I think, in the next slide, if we could move on one. Oh no, going on to the team members first of all. So this is what the team looks like. So it's myself, and we have another programme manager, Lynn McIntosh, and we report into Andy McDonald, who's our programme director. So it's a very small team at the moment, but we do rely on our regional teams from ORE Catapult to help communicate the opportunities and help us engage with companies across the different regions and the different clusters as well. So we engage a lot with the cluster representatives, trade associations and LEPs as well. And then the OWGP has an independent board, and these are our board members there as well. So our chair of our board is Martin Whitmarsh. And then we also have representatives from Renewable UK and Catapult on the board as well. Next slide, please. So so far, the OWGP was set up in June last year, and so far we have done a few things. We were sort of slow to get started as we waited funding coming through, but we have done some analysis work on strategic capability assessments, looking at offshore wind foundations. We also launched our pilot funding call to help with help companies with business competitiveness and innovation projects. So these projects are underway at the moment. And then for this year and for delivery into next year, we're looking to launch some kind of bespoke business transformation programs to help provide structured support to companies, and also to continue rolling on with the grant funding opportunities as well. So our budget over the next year is roughly 4 million. And last week we announced £2 million worth of support that we're going to be running over the next year. So next slide, please. So I mentioned the two different types of support from OWGP. So we've got business transformation, and that's very much about providing structured specialist support to help companies improve elements of competitiveness that will help their business then to grow. And we look to call on specialists or expert delivery partners to actually administer those support programs and embed people within an organisation, or just provide access to specialist consultants, depending on what the requirements of the business might be. So that would be part of a managed programme that companies can express interest, go through a sort of an assessment process, and then we can administer the best type of support or provide access to that depending on the size of the company, the scale of the ambition, and then whatever the kind of requirements are. So in the business transformation programmes, there'll be different levels of intensity as well. That will be able to help companies of different sizes and different sort of areas within the supply chain. And we would be looking as well, in addition to us providing that kind of support, there would need to have some kind of in-kind contribution from the beneficiary company as well, to get onto that programme. In addition to the business transformation stream, we're also providing grant funding to companies, and that works quite well for specific projects. So that could be whether it's a business improvement project, looking focused towards competitiveness, or if it's developing innovation. So it works particularly well, I think, for the innovation-led projects. So we provide funding directly to an applicant or a company for them to develop and manage their own projects. And the projects can be a range of sizes and scope depending on the stage of development. If it's a piece of technology, if it's adapting a particular process for offshore wind application, whether it's a feasibility study, technology demonstration. So we're quite open to the types of projects that we fund, and then the funding will depend on that, whatever the type of project that the applicant is looking to run. And similarly to the business transformation programme, we would be looking for an in-kind contribution from the company as well. Next slide, please. So going into the business transformation a little bit deeper, so this is a kind of sort of high level model, if you like, of what the what business transformation programs will look like. So as I mentioned, there'll be different levels of intensity. At the lower end, we're looking at a program that's going to be launched next month called the Wind Expert Support Toolkit, or WEST for short. So that's quite a low intensity, maybe 2 to 10 days worth of expert support for company. Then moving up the chain to sort of medium support, the likes of SD21 or Fit for Offshore Renewables. So those are the kind of programs that we would like to engage with and try to help companies through these types of support programs. And at the top of the pyramid, the sort of high intensity programs, we've got sharing and growth, and I'll come on to that in a couple of slides, but that's probably the sort of highest intensity type program we would be looking to run, that would be over a period of maybe 3 to 4 years. So yes, so in terms of current activity, we were looking to launch sharing and growth back in March, April time, but for obvious reasons that's been delayed. So we're looking to start accepting expressions of interest from that programme in September. And the Wind Expert Support Toolkit, we are developing that for launch, I believe, for next month. And I'll come on to that in a second. If we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so chatting about WEST, as I mentioned, it's a sort of low intensity intervention, and it's all about providing kind of bespoke support for a company depending on the types of requirements that they might need. And participation in this programme is completely free, and we're basing it on an existing framework that was run by Scottish Enterprise and Highlands and Islands Enterprise, called the Wind Expert Support Framework, I think it was called, and that was about providing sort of 2 days of expert support to companies. So we're building on that a little bit and trying to make it kind of flexible to meet the needs of different companies. And if we go on to the next slide, so in terms of who can apply, it's very much open to companies of all shapes and all sizes. If you're a micro SME or a startup looking to work in offshore wind, we're welcome to apply. Likewise, if you're already established in an established organisation in another sector, potentially looking to transition into the offshore wind, looking to understand a little bit more about the market and what you need to diversify, be welcome to apply. And for existing supply chain companies that are looking for potentially more strategic input into the business to kind of better understand future growth opportunities, it's open to them, it's open to those companies as well. So hopefully we could get a very broad spectrum of companies onto that programme. And next slide, please. So, so sharing and growth. So this is a programme that we are working to develop and adapt from the aerospace sector. It's been running in aerospace, I believe, for 8 years. It's been very successful in helping aerospace manufacturing companies to become more competitive in the UK. And it kind of involves embedding experts within an organisation over a period of 3 to 4 years and really helping to transform that business and help it grow. So we're working with that team to adapt that to meet the needs for offshore wind companies. And as I say, we're looking to launch that in the next couple of months. So we're doing a pilot programme of that. And I believe in the first instance, we're looking to take on probably 8 to 10 companies through that pilot programme. And if we go on to the next slide. So yes, so in terms of the companies that can apply, basically if you're ambitious company looking to further embed yourself in the industry and to accelerate growth, you'd be welcome to apply. I think in terms of the pilot, this would be particularly well suited for companies already working in the offshore wind supply chain rather than new entrants. And we're specifically looking for companies that are potentially not, you know, a very small SME side, but big enough to be able to absorb the types of support that this programme would provide. And I've put some links in there for some information of the existing programme, so you can get a better idea of what that programme would involve using these little buttons here. And next slide, please. Coming on to grant funding. So yes, so as I said, so this is, rather than just sort of handing out grants to companies, this is really focused towards specific projects, whether it's innovation project or business improvement or any other type of project. The size of the grant will depend on the type of project and the stage of development of the technologies. We're looking to kind of roll out a combination of targeted calls and open calls over the next few years, just to have them on a rolling basis, so we have a kind of dynamic grant funding programme always on the go. As I mentioned, we had our pilot funding call open last year, and those projects have moved into the delivery phase this year, which is great. And we're delighted to announce some new funding opportunities last week. So in terms of new calls, we've got, so our previous pilot calls were focused on business competitiveness and innovation. Now we're looking at a targeted call focused on cross-sector support, so in terms of building new capacity and bringing new companies into the sector. And then we've also piloting the kind of open call programme as well. And I'm not going to go into these calls in too much detail in this webinar, because I'm actually hosting a specific briefing webinar on the grant funding opportunities next week, and I've put some links in here as well, so everyone is more than welcome to join that if you'd like to find out more. Next slide, please. So in terms of the cross-sector support call, it's all about enabling diversification for UK manufacturing and technology innovation as well. And I should have said, so across these two funding calls, we've got a total budget of 600k. So that will be roughly 300k for each call budget. And we're looking to fund projects across these two focus areas, so that will help us to build new manufacturing capacity in offshore wind, to help UK businesses in adjacent sectors with existing capability, to help them de-risk existing processes and procedures, and to provide some of that diversification support. And also any kind of innovative engineering companies that are looking to de-risk their technologies, products and services, we're looking to help fund those types of projects as well. So actually the scope is pretty broad, but what we would be really looking for is that for applicants that can demonstrate some capability in another sector, and as part of that application be able to justify what the application in the offshore wind sector would be. We would also expect the projects to involve specialist partners or consultants that can help provide some of that diversification support and market intelligence. And I've put a link there as well, because there's a whole host of different criteria and some guidance available on our website. So I've provided a link there if you're interested to find a little bit more. And the deadline for the cross-sector call is Friday the 18th of September. And I've got another link there to the briefing webinar. And anything else on the funding calls, feel free to come back to me directly if you've got any specific questions. And the next slide provides a little bit more information on the open call. So again, this is pretty broad because we would quite like to invite applicants across the whole breadth of the supply chain. but it aligns quite nicely with our objectives in terms of looking to improve competitiveness and drive innovation. So if you're looking to explore or implement new processes or new ways of working that will help improve your competitiveness, you're welcome to apply. And again, in terms of innovation projects, we're looking for things that are going to present real game-changing solutions to industry challenges. So that could really be anything, providing it it answers a real industry need or provides a solution. So we are anticipating probably quite this particular call to be quite highly competitive. So we would strongly recommend support or sponsorship from an end user in the offshore wind sector to provide that kind of confidence and validation that this project would be providing a good solution. That's particularly for the innovation projects. For this call as well, we're kind of changing things up a little bit, and we're going to have a two-staged assessment process, and that's very much to help the OWGP to manage the volume of applications that we get in, to determine early on whether projects are going to be eligible or not, and also to help us direct the full applications to the best assessors. So I should say that these full stage application forms for the cross-sector call and the open call will all be assessed independently externally from OWGP to minimise any conflict. So again, I have included the call details, and this application deadline for the stage 1 application is on Friday the 21st of August. And as I say, I'll be going into more detail on that next week on the briefing webinar. Next slide, please. Okay, so I believe this is my last slide. So it's just to give an indication of our planned activities for the next year. We're really trying to align our projects and programs and opportunities with the different events that are ongoing in the sector to help kind of maximise the kind of the traction that we get with interested companies, and to promote the opportunities as best we can. So very much looking forward to September for SNS. To see how we can become more engaged in that and engage with companies in the region to engage in our business transformation programmes, because that will be quite timely. Yes, so as I say, we continue to develop further programmes over the next year or so. And if you are interested in anything that the OWGP is developing, or if you've got any questions, I would really recommend you to register. I've put the details down there in the corner. Register so that we can provide you with any information and opportunities as they arise, so that you'll be in our mailing list. There's our contact details if you've got any questions, and I would certainly encourage everybody to watch out for further details in August, September time, where we launch our future programmes. And I think the last slide is just, yes, so if you go onto our website and click on that yellow box, then you can register with us and I can contact you directly. So that's everything for me. Many thanks for listening to me, and happy to answer questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Claire. And Claire will be joining us again at the end of the Q&A session. And just to reiterate, for those that you may not join us at the very beginning, we're taking questions for the Q&A session at the end on the Slido platform. So please go to sli.do, and on that use the registration EA Hub, that's EAH in uppercase and then UB, and then you can post your questions on there for our panel, which will be Claire from ORE Catapult and a number of representatives from Scottish Power Renewables as well. So please post your questions there. And once those questions are posted, you can actually see there's a thumbs up there. If you like the question, if you think it's a good quality question, just like that question, and it rises up to the top of the list of questions. So there's more likelihood of that particular question being asked. So please go onto the Slido platform and post your questions. And also a huge thanks to Claire, for the presentation, which was great. Great to know there's some support for supply chain companies out there. And good to see that ORE Catapult are active in the region with Andy Holyland, the local representative in the east of England. And also just to say a huge thanks to Claire for mentioning SNS 2020. It's EEEGR's key event, main event, and that's taking place on the 16th and 17th of September. Go to the EEEGR website and get more details there, and you'll be able to meet Claire and other people from Scottish Power Renewables at that virtual event, which is taking place in September. And I think now we're about to go over to the Scottish Power Renewables video introducing the East Anglia Hub and developments on that. We have had some problems earlier on with playing that, so hopefully this is all going to work now, but it may just take a second.
Thank you for joining this presentation today. My name is Ross Ovens. I'm the Project Director for East Anglia Hub. Today, the aim is to give you an update on the project and what the project's all about, and also to give you an overview of some of the recent progress we've been making with the project. Through the presentation, I'll also be joined by two of my colleagues. Firstly is Julio, he's our contracts manager, and secondly, Victoria Sinclair, who's the Senior Supply Chain Strategy Manager. So before I go into the detail on the East Anglia Hub project, I'm just going to provide a bit of background on Scottish Power and the business and how Scottish Power fits into the wider Iberdrola group. Scottish Power is an integrated energy company, which means that we generate electricity through renewables, we transport it with our networks business, and then we sell it to our 5 million UK customers. As part of our 100% green energy strategy that we set out in 2018, we anticipated an investment plan of around about £6 billion. We're now well on track to delivering against this, where we've made investments in both onshore and offshore wind, also within our networks infrastructure business, and delivering innovations such as the battery storage facility at Whiteley Wind Farm, which is now under construction. We have over 2,000 megawatts of onshore and offshore wind power supplying our UK customers, which is supported by a team of over 5,600 people. Back in 2018, Scottish Power made the bold decision to become 100% green. That means producing all of our electricity from both onshore and offshore wind projects. At the same time, this meant disposing of all of our traditional generation assets, such as coal and gas. Out of all of the big utilities in the UK, Scottish Power was the very first to make this important step. It was also an important step for Scottish Power towards our goal of becoming clean and green. Scottish Power is part of the Iberdrola group, meaning that we're an international business with projects all over the world. Now, depending on where you are in the world, you'll know us by different brands. In the United Kingdom, we're known as Scottish Power. Throughout the rest of Europe, we're Iberdrola. In the US, we're Avangrid Renewables. And in Brazil, we're Neoenergia. Looking specifically at the offshore wind projects, we've been busy positioning ourselves as a global leader with projects all over the world in 4 key areas. The first area is the UK, second is mainland Europe, third is Brazil, and the fourth is US. In terms of projects that are operational, we have the Vikinga project in the German Baltic, and we have the West of Duddon Sands project here in the UK. We then have 2 projects under construction, which is Sambriu, and the East Anglia 1 project, which is due to come online in the coming weeks. Looking more specifically now at the East Anglia Hub project, this is an extremely exciting project for Scottish Power. We have the ability to deliver up to 3,100 megawatts, which in turn is up to 2.7 million homes powered and using up to 280 turbines. We have a lot of technical challenges to overcome, where we're working in water depths between 24 and 76 meters. And we've got a total area to cover of 731 square kilometers. The East Anglia Hub project is made up of 3 projects which are located in the southern North Sea. The projects are East Anglia 1 North, East Anglia 2 and East Anglia 3. East Anglia 3 is fully consented, and 1 North and 2 we're still seeking consents for. Looking at the individual projects now that make up the East Anglia Hub, firstly, East Anglia 1 North. East Anglia 1 North is up to 800 megawatts of capacity. We could install up to 67 turbines. We're around about 47 kilometres from the ports of Lowestoft, and we have water depths of between 36 and 59 metres, and we're around about 208 square kilometres. Moving now on to East Anglia 2. East Anglia 2 is a project of up to 900 megawatts capacity, which is up to 75 turbines. It's around about 45 kilometres from the port of Lowestoft, and with a water depth range between 29 and 76 metres, and covers an area of 218 square kilometres. And the last project to make up the East Anglia Hub is East Anglia 3. This is the largest of the 3 projects at around 1,400 megawatts capacity, meaning up to 126 turbines. It's also the furthest project from shore at 78 kilometres, and with a water depth range of between 36 and 59 metres, and covering an area of 305 square kilometres. Looking now at the technology that we plan to deploy on the East Anglia Hub project, and initially looking at wind turbines, we're looking at the next generation of wind turbines coming to the market, where we plan to deploy up to 280 machines. We're looking for an early turbine supplier selection in order to work collaboratively on optimization with that supplier through the next 12 to 18 months. And we expect to deploy monopiles across all 3 projects on the East Anglia Hub. Looking at the dimensions of the machines, we expect that the maximum tip height will be around 282 metres, and with a rotor diameter of up to 250 metres. As East Anglia Hub is made up of 3 individual projects, we also have 3 individual off-tow connections. Now that means that East Anglia 1 North and 2, which are AC projects, will have a landfall at Sizewell. We've got a 9-kilometre onshore cable route, and then we'll be connecting into Friston. East Anglia 3, which is a DC project, will actually landfall at Bordsea. We've then got a much longer onshore connection of around about 37 kilometres, of which we've actually pre-installed all of the onshore cable ducting through the East Anglia 1 project. The project will then connect in at Bramford, where we'll have the onshore converter station converting the power from DC to AC before it's then connected into the national grid. Looking now at the offshore grid connections for both East Anglia 1 North and 2, these will be AC connections. We're going to be using 66 kV array cables to bring the power from the turbines through to the offshore substation. The offshore substation will then step up the power from 66 kV up to the 275 kV, and that power will then be transported through to the onshore grid connection, where it will go into national grid. The offshore substation itself, so the top side, is expected to be around about 5,000 tonnes, and that will sit on top of a jacket of around about 2,500 tonnes, plus the weight of the piles. We're in a very early phase of the design work for these substations at the moment, so the design work is ongoing, and we have various tenders coming to the market shortly for design of the systems and for supply of electrical and mechanical equipment, and also for the fabrication of the jackets and the top sides. As East Anglia 1 North and 2 are so similar, we also expect that those 2 top sides will be very, very similar, if not duplicates of each other. So now looking at the connection for East Anglia 3. East Anglia 3 will be a DC connection. We'll be using the same 66 kV array cables as we were using on 1 North and 2. So that again is to collect the power from the turbines, bring it through to what's now an offshore converter station rather than an offshore substation. That converts the power from AC into DC and then transmits the power at 320 1,000 volts DC to the onshore converter station, where it's then converted back into AC before being put into national grid. The top side is expected to be around about 9,000 tons, and that will sit on top of a jacket of around about 3,000 to 4,000 tons. At the moment, the design is quite well advanced for the DC system, and we're currently working with the key suppliers in the market to secure the capacity for the manufacturing. So looking at the timeline for the project, we're now in the process of engaging with the supply chain. We're out to tender for multiple packages of work, and we're looking to bring on some key suppliers over the next 12 to 18 months. We're then preparing ourselves for the next CFD auction, which we expect to happen towards the end of 2021. And then we'll be planning for construction, where we expect to be undertaking the key scopes of work between 2022 and 2026, where we expect to bring online all 3 projects by the end of 2026. In terms of the works that are actually underway right now, we've recently signed a contract with Fugro. That's to deliver geophysical and geotechnical basic information on 1 North and 2 this year, and then to go into the detailed geophysical and geotechnical campaigns next year across all 3 projects. That work has recently mobilized and is underway offshore right now. Okay, thank you for listening, and I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Julio.
Thank you, Ross. Hi, everyone. I'm Julio de la Jara, Head of Contract Management for East Anglia Hub projects, leading the commercial and contractual team to manage all the contracting strategy and the commercial contractual risks within the 3 projects that form the East Anglia Hub. I'm going to take the opportunity today to get you through what's been established contracting strategy and contracting timescales for the East Anglia Hub projects. As explained by Ross previously, the concept behind the East Anglia Hub is to develop our 3 remaining projects within the East Anglia zone together under a single program. The idea behind this is coming after the results obtained in the last CFD round when East Anglia THREE did not go ahead. However, rather than leaving the project behind, we have decided to transform a challenge into an opportunity. So we believe that by joining these 3 projects, we are in a much better position to confront the challenges ahead. So considering and looking at the market trends and prospects, there are some key challenges that we need to face as an industry and we as a developer. So we are all aware of the high demand expected for the coming years in the offshore wind market with ambitious targets and ambitious not only in capacity but also in prices. The latest results in different options, the current regulatory frameworks, the large appetite on the offshore wind market, and an aggressive competition are pulling the prices down. Consequently, to make this happen and to make this project happen and meet the required targets, we need all to look at all possible alternatives to bring down the cost. At the same time, we still need to make it attractive for our investors and our supply chain against other markets, whether it's a non-European market, offshore grid interconnectors, or other sources of green energy. Having those challenges in mind, we believe that the East Anglia Hub presents clear opportunities to successfully overcome those challenges. The combination of a larger scope and an early appointment of key suppliers can provide the required certainty to our supply chain to drive further the technology. So we can optimize our project from a very early stage when a higher influence can be made. And this will allow at the same time to secure the business case towards all possible routes to market. So in order to achieve these results, we are already engaging with the supply chain with an aggressive contracting program to bring on board our tier 1 suppliers. We have already been out in the market at the very end of last year to be able to appoint a wind turbine prepared supplier by now. With this early appointment and joint efforts with the wind turbine supplier, it's going to allow us to further optimize the design works. We have a robust project program and a consolidated business case. In parallel, we are in discussions already with the elements, in particular for East Anglia THREE, where we were well advanced due to all the work performed in the last couple of years with some key suppliers, and planning to appoint the preferred supplier by the end of the year in some key elements. The remaining scopes, as you can see here in the slides, are in transport and installation and foundation supply. The engagement with the suppliers has already commenced, and we are aiming to have our main suppliers on board by the beginning of 2021. We believe that with the key strategic suppliers in place, we will be able to consolidate the design, to have a more robust technical solution, a consolidated program, and building an optimum business case. In summary, with such a large program and within a high volume of works for a long period of time, we will be able to secure the best value of the hub. With those strategic areas identified, bringing on board key strategic suppliers, promoting the collaboration with the supply chain, defining clear goals, and securing the delivery of the project, while we will be able to optimize the business case and the hub program. In this case, ScottishPower Renewables is fully committed to develop this project, but this will only be possible with the collaboration of our supply chain to make it happen. Thank you very much all, and I hand over to my colleague Victoria.
Thanks, Julio. My name is Victoria Sinclair, and I'm the Senior Supply Chain Strategy Manager for the offshore business in the UK. Today, I'll be presenting to you our supplier engagement opportunities for East Anglia Hub in 2020 and 2021. In 2020, we will be at the Southern North Sea Conference hosted by the East of England Energy Group on the 16th and 17th of September, where the theme this year is Transition to 2050. We will also be attending the Global Offshore Wind Conference hosted by Renewable UK from the 28th to the 30th of October, where the theme is Route to Net Zero. Throughout the remainder of 2020, we'll continue to provide virtual updates through webinars with the East of England Energy Group and clusters around the UK. This includes plans to host a webinar with our preferred bidder for the wind turbine supply and installation contractor. This will focus on the wind turbine package, and it will have representations from East Anglia Hub as well as the supplier. Then in 2021, we hope to resume our usual schedule of conferences and events as soon as these become available for booking. After we have taken our final investment decision, we will host an East Anglia Hub supply chain event where you can meet with members of the East Anglia Hub team as well as members of contracting parties that have been appointed. To keep up to date with our events and conferences, we strongly recommend you register on the ScottishPower Renewables Offshore Supply Chain database. This is hosted on our website, and you'll see a link for it on the screen now. Here you'll find out information about our contract awards for East Anglia Hub. We will be posting details about the Tier 1 contractors, along with the description of their scope and their contact details. After you have registered on the database, you will receive updates about the events and conferences that we are attending, and your information will be available for SPR staff looking to tender goods and services. We will also be using the database to support the growth of the UK supply chain in the EEEGR Hub. We will be doing this through our procurement phase by requesting that bidding parties identify potential UK suppliers. East Anglia Hub will then use this information to work with the Tier 1 supply chain to identify which scopes have the best opportunities for UK content. Once identified, we will select the appropriate suppliers who are registered in our database and share their information with our Tier 1 contractors. In this way, ScottishPower Renewables will be setting a clear expectation for UK content with the supply chain at the early tender stages, then working with our supply chain to understand where the most competitive and sustainable opportunities for UK growth can come about. There will also be contractual deliverables for Tier 1 supply chain to support East Anglia Hub in our UK content aspirations, as well as help us grow skills and innovation in the UK. This is demonstrating their commitment, as well as ours, to reaching the industry goal of 60% UK content by 2030. Our commitment to raising UK content of the offshore wind industry and using the East Anglia Hub to find opportunities for UK content that deliver sustainable economic growth and jobs for regions across the UK has been based on our experience of East Anglia 1. For our East Anglia 1 project, we set a target of 50% UK, and we're pleased to say that as we enter into the operations phase, we have exceeded this. You'll find examples of this UK content in the £25 million that we've spent with contractors in East Anglia since we started developing the project. It's also in the £30 million that we've spent developing port infrastructure in the region, and the £50 million of contracts that have been awarded directly to local supply chain for a range of construction and operations support. But we also recognise that the growth of our industry will rely on much more than contract awards. We've invested in future talent at the Offshore Wind Skills Centre run by East Coast College. We're proud to deliver STEM workshops to primary school aged children and host work placements for students in school and university. Our Lowestoft operations and maintenance base will be the workplace for 100 full-time staff, and we hope this will be just the beginning of SPR's legacy in East Anglia.
Thank you very much, Victoria, and thank you, Julio, as well. And thank you, everybody, for listening to today's presentation. I hope you found it informative. For any further information, you can always visit the ScottishPower website. We do plan on filming some further updates through the course of the year and also filming and attending some of the webinar events. So please look out for those events as they come up. So for now, thank you very much for listening.
Hi there, and Simon Gray again here from EEEGR. Just to say that we now have some contact details for you there, so make a note of those. Also to say that my colleague Marie has just posted out that the webinar has been recorded, and we'll be sharing that link, so you'll all be able to access that after this event as well, if you need to note down any of the various links and URLs that are embedded within the presentations. So if I could ask our various panel members to rejoin us and turn their cameras on for the Q&A session. Ross Overs, Project Director at EA Hub, Julio de la Jara from the Head of Contract Management on the project, and Victoria Sinclair, Senior Supply Chain Strategy Manager on the project as well, and also Claire Canning from ORE Catapult. I think we have a number of questions already on the Slido platform. But before I go on to Slido, was there any comments from any of our speakers that they wanted to add to any of the points that they'd made earlier at all? Claire, was there anything you wanted to add at all, or?
I don't think so, no.
Jolly good. Okay, well, let's just go through some of the questions we've got there. As I say, the webinar has been recorded, so we'll be able to share the link to the full recording to all people, all delegates that are signed up for this. So one of the questions being asked, and I guess this is probably going to be for Victoria and Julio, but how do I get onto the EA Hub pre-qualification supply chain database was one of the first questions there.
Sure. Thanks, Simon. So in the video, you'll have seen some information about the ScottishPower Renewables offshore wind supply chain database on our website. So if you head to ScottishPower Renewables website, you'll find an opportunity to register your details there with us. But what I can also say is that ScottishPower is switching to a new supplier portal called Go Supply. The details of that are going to be sent out to everybody who's registered on our offshore wind database in the next couple of weeks. And when you have a link to that, you'll be able to register your capabilities and the scope of services that you offer with ScottishPower directly. We would be looking to use that service going forward for a number of scopes and services across ScottishPower. And it will also be free to register on there. But we would urge you to also register on the supply chain database that you'll see in the video, because that's what we'll be using to contact people about events and conferences and big contract announcements that we'll be making on East Anglia Hub, as well as other projects in our portfolio.
Thank you, Victoria, as well, for your mention of SNS, so much appreciated. A couple of questions here, I believe, for Claire. Who will provide the support services to businesses through the WEST programme, please?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Just check I wasn't on mute there. And thank you, John, for the question. So actually, the WEST programme will be delivered by several delivery partners, so specialist consultants. And my colleague Lynn McIntosh has been developing the WEST programme, and she's actually going to be launching a RFQ for companies to provide the support services for this programme next week. So that's something to look out for. So we're probably looking, I believe, for roughly 6 consultancies across the UK to deliver that programme. So we'll keep an eye out for that, and we'll probably be putting some information on our social media when that gets launched.
Thanks for that. Another question there is where does the OWGP funding come from?
So the funding comes from the Offshore Wind Industry Council, so many acronyms, which is the sort of the group of offshore wind developers. So our funding comes directly from industry and then goes directly out to fund supply chain companies through the different programmes that we have.
Okay. There's another question from John Best, bless him. In terms of identifying solutions to industry need, would it be helpful to highlight Offshore Wind Innovation Hub? So yeah, I mean that's a comment I think as opposed to a question. So thank you for that, John. That's a useful link, and we'll make sure that that's included. And I think you've already touched on this question, Victoria. Will you be using any procurement services such as Achilles? And I think you're saying you're using Go Supply, and you'll be sending more information around about that later.
Yes, that's correct. There is information already on the ScottishPower website about Go Supply for anyone who's interested in checking that out just now, but we will also be sending out information to everyone registered in the database with more detail about it.
And as I say, within the slides that were contained in the presentation that will be on the video, you have the link to ScottishPower Renewables supply chain portal as well, so you can register there. If you're not already registered, I urge you to register on that now if you can as well. Another question for Claire. Can you give us a little bit more information about SC21, NMCL and Fit for Offshore Renewables, please? And how can you access them?
Yes, so sorry, I don't think I was very clear on this in the slides. So I have SC21, NMCL and Fit for as examples of medium intensity support programmes. So SC21 is supply chains for the 21st century, and I think it's being developed or delivered for the aerospace and defence sectors. NMCL is the National Manufacturing Competitiveness Levels, and that's being, I think, delivered in various manufacturing sectors, but primarily aerospace and automotive. So those two are programmes that we are engaging with at the moment to try and understand a bit more of how these programmes are delivered, to see if that's something we can adapt for offshore wind. So just to be clear, we're not actually delivering these programmes at the moment. However, I'm sure I could provide you the links and you could certainly go in and see if it's something that you'd be interested in. But at the moment, I don't know if it's something that can be applied to offshore wind. For the Fit for Offshore Renewables, absolutely. So that's a programme that's already being delivered by ORE Catapult, and I believe is actually being piloted down in the East Anglia region at the moment. So I'd be more than happy to put you in touch with my colleagues, Andy Holyland, and some other key representatives who can help provide more detail on that and how you could register for Fit for. But to be clear, the OWGP is not funding companies through Fit for at the moment. We don't have a framework in place for that yet, but in future, hopefully that's something we'd be able to organise.
So I think for anyone that wants any more information about that, you know, Claire's already put her details up, but also if you need to come through to EEEGR, we can assist with that and make sure that we forward your call to the right person. Another one for ScottishPower Renewables. What is the EA Hub target for UK content, and how are you measuring that, please?
Sure, I'm happy to pick that one up, Simon. So at this stage of the East Anglia Hub projects, we haven't set a UK content target, and that's mainly because we're still in the early design phase and we're still trying to understand from supply chain what the opportunities for UK content are. But we do plan to set one in the near future. And the target for that, I would say that we're taking into account the fact that we have an industry target from the offshore wind sector deal for 60% UK content by 2030. So any target that we set will be aspirationally looking at how we're contributing to that longer term target for the UK. And in terms of how it's measured, so currently what we have is a standard methodology which is publicised by Renewable UK and was created by BVG Associates. So that's the standard that every offshore wind farm in the UK should be using for reporting UK content, and that's what we ask our supply chain to use. However, we know that there is a commitment to review that and update it so that it's more reflective of changes that the industry has seen over the past 5 to 10 years. I believe that the updates to that methodology are on hold whilst the BEIS do their supply chain guidance consultation. So we're hoping that once their supply chain plan guidance consultation is complete, the industry will then be able to move on with updating the methodology, and that's what we would then use. But that should be publicly available for anyone who's interested to see it once it's available.
Thank you, Victoria. That's useful. And I guess this is an allied question here as well, Victoria, for you. How many permanent jobs will the project provide after construction, which I think you actually touched on in your presentation, but just for you to reiterate.
Sure, yeah. So in terms of permanent jobs, those would be associated with the O&M phase. We are not quite at this phase of being able to understand exactly how many permanent jobs would be created by East Anglia Hub. And that's partly because taking forward 3 projects at once is something that's new for us. We understand how many jobs we have created for East Anglia 1, but it doesn't necessarily follow the same assumptions in terms of the number of jobs that you need per megawatts. So we're still trying to understand that, and we'll work closely with our turbine supplier to understand that as well. What I would say though is no matter what number that comes out as, we will be making it clear, first of all, to the local stakeholders who need to understand that number. So people like the Skills for Energy group, they will be involved in understanding that number. Local authorities, the East Coast College, will want to communicate with them so that no matter how many permanent jobs there are, our key focus will be how do we make sure that those are locally recruited jobs. And that's something that we've had a lot of success with in East Anglia 1, so we'd expect to be successful in that for East Anglia Hub too.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what technologies and systems you'll be using by 2022, so it's probably too early to say yet. But obviously that will emerge, and EEEGR will keep you regularly updated with information from ScottishPower Renewables, particularly at SNS 2020 in September. So another question for Claire: will companies that receive grant funding from OWGP get one-to-one introductions with potential customers? So I think, Claire, people are asking whether you can personally introduce them to lots and lots of companies where they can do business.
Yeah, it's a good question, but so actually I think there are good opportunities through the OWGP because as I said, because we're funded by industry, we have the companies, the developers and our funders have a vested interest in how the OWGP projects progress, the kinds of companies that we're bringing in, the kinds of companies that we're funding. So we're actually kind of in a position at the moment where we're trying to best determine how we can showcase these projects and make those introductions. So for example, for the pilot projects that we're working on just now, when these projects come to an end, we're working with OEC representatives that feed into the OWGP, how we can have maybe like a demo day or a showcase event, or whether it is one-to-ones that we can best kind of show the outputs of the projects. So yes, in a sense, but we're kind of working out the best way that we can make that happen.
Thank you, Claire. And I think certainly ScottishPower Renewables and I think ORE Catapult are both participating in SNS 2020, which there will be one-to-one meet the buyer opportunities. So you'll be able to pre-book appointments to meet up with ScottishPower Renewable representatives and with representatives from ORE Catapult to find out more. So do make sure you register on that. Another good question here for ScottishPower Renewables: do you anticipate you'll use the same turbine model for the whole hub?
Yeah, I can take that one if you like. So I mean, we've mentioned a couple of times about sort of standardization across the project, and this is a key area for us, really. You know, in order to really leverage the scale of a project of this size, we'll be looking for standardization in as many areas as possible. And so of course, we'll be looking then for the same turbine model across the whole of the East Anglia Hub, across all 3 projects. That goes for a lot of things. You know, we'll be looking for a standardized foundation design if possible as well. So we'll be looking for standardization really where we can find it.
Thank you, Ross. I'm slightly concerned about opening the Brexit bag of worms here. There's a question there. How will East Anglia Hub and SPR deal with Brexit and the potential consequences of the supply chain companies involved, particular fabricators and contractors? A hell of a subject. Do you want to just give us a sort of 3-word answer or whatever? Because I don't think we've got enough time to debate the whole subject now.
I'll take that one. Yeah, hot topic, I guess, for a while.
Yeah.
We need to recognize that Brexit is here. It's here to stay. So it's becoming a reality. We accept there are some unknowns at this stage. But we are progressing with the project as well, and we're expecting to have further visibility on what is the actual impact of Brexit, if any. And by working together and strengthening our relationship with our supply chain to really identify where is any potential issue and how would that be materialized, and work together with our supply chain on those ones. But I guess it's a matter of progressing with the project, having further visibility on those ones and work. It's not only an issue for East Anglia Hub. I think it's something for the whole industry, and not only offshore wind, but the whole in the industry in general, in the UK.
We started just a little bit late, so I will just go slightly over by a couple of minutes, because there are so many questions that we have here for all you guys. So one question here, which I think is quite interesting, is if you're approved by Iberdrola, can this be transferred to ScottishPower? And I guess the other way around as well. So is there a group-wide international approval system within Iberdrola? So if you are an approved contractor with ScottishPower, does it apply to other Iberdrola global projects, and vice versa?
I take that one again. Yeah, I mean, so we have a joint team, or we have visibility across the whole group, especially for offshore wind. We are a global market. We are working across borders, as Ross was mentioning before. Our pipeline or portfolio is international, so it wouldn't make sense if we don't have visibility or unknown what our suppliers in Iberdrola and also ScottishPower or Avangrid in the US.
Yeah, and indeed, we've done a couple of presentations with Avangrid, so thanks for that. Sorry, Ross, carry on.
I was just going to say, just to build on that as well, I mean, I guess some people get hung up on whether we're Iberdrola or ScottishPower, but if you refer back to the presentation, really all it is just a different brand of how we're known differently within the different parts of the world. So we, as Julio says, we have good visibility of all that information, and we are an offshore business working globally. So we have, if you're approved on that system, then you'll be part of that.
Great stuff. And the one last question before we close and just wrap up. Just post-construction, will EA Hub operate from a single O&M base? If so, where will this be? Or is the intention for all operations to be mobile from the new EA1 facility?
So I'm trying to think who's the best one to take that, but as nobody else has spoken up, I'll take that one.
Well done.
So I think it's clear to say, the facilities that we have in place for East Anglia 1 have been incredibly effective. So it would be a difficult decision to do anything other than what we have there already and make use of what's there already. But we are in the early stages of planning and designing the project. So still, until we've really got our key contractors on board, we won't be able to commit to anything like that. But clearly, as I said, it's a good facility there. It's working extremely well, and we'd look to make use of that as much as we can.
Yeah, it's a great facility that you guys kindly opened up for us for last year's Offshore Wind Week. We'll be doing something similar for Wind Week as it is this year, later on in the year as well. But before we close the session, because we've run out of time and we've gone slightly over, I just want to check whether anyone had any other points from the panel they wish to make at all.
I was just going to say thank you to the supply chain, really. We're clearly in challenging and strange times at the moment, which none of us could have really foreseen at the beginning of the year. But despite that, we've managed to actually keep an awful lot of things moving with the project. So it's just a thanks to everybody for that. And a couple of areas, we're still tendering. We've still got a lot of activity ongoing with the supply chain. So everybody's really engaging with that. So thank you for that. And also, during the period of May, we've actually managed to get some works onshore underway. So we've used a UK supplier, Boland, to undertake some onshore ecology surveys. We had to put in place some additional safeguards to make sure we were protecting the people who were working and also protecting the public. But once we found a way around that, we managed to get those works working. And as I said in the presentation, we've also got the Fugro contract awarded, and we've got that scope underway. So
we went through a period where we thought it was going to be challenging to do anything, and then all of a sudden we found a way through, and that was really due to the resilience of the supply chain. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, it has been amazing the way the supply chain in the east of England has responded to the crisis, and so congratulations to all of those that have been involved, and I think it's been some amazing work that we've seen going on. So thanks to all our participants today. It's been really insightful, really informative. So thanks to Victoria, Ross, Julio, and Claire Canning. Just to say, obviously, I mentioned earlier on SNS 2020, in which both our colleagues, the SPR and ORE Catapult, will be involved in. SNS 2020, Smart Generation Transition to Net Zero, is on the 16th and 17th of September. Please go to the EEEGR website and look at the events page there, and they'll tell you far more about that. A great session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Look out on the EEEGR website for other webinars. We try and do one probably pretty much every other Wednesday. So look out for those and keep up to date with the latest Webinar Wednesdays from EEEGR. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to all delegates for participating. Thanks to all our speakers, and a virtual round of applause for you all. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And if I could ask our speakers just to stay online, for everyone else, all delegates, if I could now ask you to log on.